Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar, Transforming Affordable Housing Access, How Providers Are Ending Youth Homelessness. We are going to get started in just a couple of minutes. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name's Darla Bardine. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Network for Youth. It is my honor to welcome you to our webinar today, Transforming Affordable Housing Access, How Providers Are Ending Youth Homelessness. Next slide, please. We'll start with some housekeeping. If you could please introduce yourself in chat, please include your names, pronouns, organization, location, and an emoji of something you like to do. Also, please ask questions throughout the presentation, but please use the Q&A box. Also, the webinar slides and the recording will be available and on our website, and we will share the link to the slide deck in chat during this presentation. And we will be releasing a report focused on the content of this webinar, Transforming Affordable Housing Access, later on this month. Next slide. It is my pleasure that we are joined by 4 experts today who you will hear from soon. You'll hear from Dane, Liz, Tammy, and Bonita, and Trinity will do bigger introductions of them later. Next slide, please. For those of you who are joining us and are unfamiliar with the work of the National Network for Youth, we're a 51-year-old organization that is on a mission to transform systems so that no young person in America experiences homelessness. We partner with both young people with lived expertise of homelessness as systems, as well as our members who are primarily community-based youth service providers, as well as education, McKinney-Vento homeless liaisons, and state and national policy advocates. Next slide, please. We accomplish our mission through 3 primary programs. So we have our Youth Leadership and Partnership Program, which is primarily through our National Youth Advisory Council, where we partner with young leaders with lived expertise to educate, advocate, and train others to prevent and end youth and young adult homelessness. We do a lot of policy advocacy work. Like I said, we partner with service providers, McKinney-Vento liaisons, young people, and other allies. And then we also provide support directly to communities through our Supporting Communities program. We help communities build local youth action boards, strengthen partnerships, and really implement a comprehensive cross-systems approach to preventing and ending youth homelessness by addressing the root causes. Next slide, please. We want to highlight some of our recent resources. We're very excited to be partnering with Baker McKenzie Law Firm. Later on this month, on the 21st, we are going to be launching I Am Here, a vital document legal hotline for young people. We even have a phone number, 1-800-870-DOCS. This will be a free national resource to help young people navigate the often the complicated systems in order to access a copy of your birth certificate, your social security card, and a valid government ID. We recently released a in-district advocacy toolkit. It's a take action toolkit to really help provide steps and resources on how you can connect with your federal representatives in their state, in their district, through in-person meetings while they're back home, and through hosting site visits or program visits either at your youth homelessness provider or your school. And finally, we are a membership organization. We're proud to be a membership organization, and we invite all of you who are not members to consider becoming a member of the National Network for Youth. And with that, I am happy to hand it over to Trinity.
Thank you, Darla. Hello, everyone. My name is Trinity Maddock, and I'm the Senior Policy Associate here at the National Network for Youth. So just want to reiterate what Darla said earlier, that we will have a report coming out this month, which is Affordable Housing Month. Based on the content of this webinar, so you'll be able to read more about the providers that you'll hear from today, as well as some additional providers who did not join us today. So be on the lookout for that report again this month, which is, again, Affordable Housing Month. So happy Affordable Housing Month. All right, so before we talk about the prevalence of youth, young adult, and young family homelessness and the current landscape of affordable housing, I just wanted to quickly review some terms that you may hear throughout this presentation and see in our upcoming report. So youth and young adults, youth being people ages 13 to 17, and young adults ages 18 to 25 or 26. Area median income. So this is the median household income of the metropolitan area or non-metropolitan area. So not the average, it's actually the income that's right in the middle. You'll hear the term low income. So what is a low income household? This is defined as a household with incomes greater than 50%, but less than 80% of that area median income. You'll hear a lot about extremely low income households. So these are households that are at or below the federal poverty guideline, or 30% of the area median income, whichever is greater. And I do want to point out that the calculations used for low income, extremely low income, middle income, they're pretty old and haven't been updated in a really long time. And National Network for Youth is actually an endorser of a bill that would modernize the formulas used to create these low income, extremely low income, middle income, et cetera, parameters. Affordable housing is defined as housing and utilities that cost less than 30% of the household income. So that's what is considered affordable. And then finally, available housing, units that are both affordable and vacant or not occupied by a higher income household, which is a pretty prevalent issue that we'll talk about in just a moment. Okay, so national estimates of youth and young adult homelessness have found that in total, 4.2 million youth and young adults experience homelessness each year, with 3.5 million young adults ages 18 to 25 experiencing homelessness each year. And the reason this number, of course, is so much larger than some other numbers that you may have seen is because it does capture the more hidden ways that young people tend to experience homelessness. So through couch surfing, living in cars, living in motels, or other potentially unsafe situations. And it's partly because of this more hidden experience of homelessness that young people tend to face barriers in accessing housing assistance services, because they may not be seen as particularly vulnerable or as a priority. And you'll hear some additional, more specific challenges that young people face in accessing housing from Dane later on. So why is it so important to help young people access affordable housing and supportive services? I'm sure we can all think of a million reasons why it's important, but one that I do want to highlight is that the key to ending chronic homelessness among older adults is to prevent homelessness or end it as early as possible. Up to 40% of adults experiencing chronic homelessness first experienced homelessness under the age of 25. And we also know that programs that are specifically tailored to young people are very successful at helping them attain education, employment, and stability. So helping young people is really key to preventing and ending chronic homelessness. But by deprioritizing young people, we're just feeding into that cycle or into that system that tells young people that they can't get help until they've gone through even more hardships. And this issue doesn't just affect youth and young adults. A high percentage of young people experiencing homelessness are pregnant or parenting. National estimates show 1.1 million minors each year experience homelessness. A Schoolhouse Connection just came out with their new report that found that in 2022 to 2023, an estimated 447,000 infants and toddlers experienced homelessness with their families. We also know that families with children are twice as likely to be evicted as families without children. So when we're talking about helping that young parent, we're also talking about helping that second generation and really breaking that cycle of homelessness and poverty that can happen among these young families. So switching gears here to talk about the current landscape and availability of affordable housing. So as you can see in this graphic, nationally, there are about 11 million extremely low income renters and only 7.1 million rental units that would be considered affordable to them. So again, 30% or less of that household's income. However, 3.4 million of those 7 million affordable rental units are already occupied by a higher income household. So maybe a low income household or a middle income household. So really, for the 11 million extremely low income renters, there are only 3.7 million units available to them. Now, how does this affect young people in particular? Well, households that are headed by youth or young adults, so by someone 13 to 17 or 18 to 25, are very likely to have extremely low incomes. So you can see here, youth-headed households, an average income of $9,000 annually. Young adult-headed households, an average income of almost $11,000 annually. And a study from the Urban Institute found that in the 3 metropolitan areas they observed, the share of youth and young adult headed households occupying affordable housing units was very, very, very low. So in Baltimore, just 2%, same in Atlanta, and in Albuquerque, it was less than 1%. And as I mentioned, Dana's going to touch on some of the reasons why that might be very shortly. But lastly, I just want to answer the question, maybe the share is so low because there's not a need for affordable housing for youth or young adults or young parents. But unfortunately, the data would tell us otherwise. All the kind of different numbers that we have counting young people experiencing homelessness do show an increase in the number of young people being identified as experiencing homelessness. So we have that information from Schoolhouse Connection or the information from the Department of Housing and Urban Development or the Department of Education. All of these different numbers are clear that the issue of youth and young adult and young family homelessness is not gone away, and difficulty in accessing affordable housing options is a huge issue. So with that, I'm very happy to turn it over to my colleague, Dane, who serves on National Networks for Youth's National Youth Advisory Council and a number of other boards as well, to talk about some issues that youth face in accessing affordable housing.
Hello, everyone. As Trinity said, my name is Dane, and I use he, her, and them pronouns. I have been experiencing chronic homelessness since I was 16 years old, and I am almost 25 now and just got some sort of stable housing last year. Over the years of me being homeless and doing homeless advocacy work and living in shelters as well, I've seen multiple cases of youth trying very, very, very hard to get on their feet, get a job, to find somewhere to live, to have somewhere affordable to live, and it's very difficult. I mean, if you think about being in your 20s or being in your 30s looking for somewhere to live that's not astronomically priced and in a safe environment and somewhere that will actually be worth living. It's hard. It's really hard. You could have a great job and your own car and all these savings and you still struggle to find somewhere to live. But as a 17-year-old who just ended up on the streets without your documents or even with partial documents, nobody wants to rent to a 17-year-old with partial documents, no credit score or a low credit score, and no rental experience. My experience personally was a lot of issues with the fact that I have a low credit score due to medical debt, which they don't care about. They just see that it's a low credit score. And I didn't have any rental history because any apartments or places that I lived in, there was 5 to 8 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment, all trying to get out of the shelter, and only one person was on the lease. So there was no proof that I had rented anywhere. There was no proof that I had income. There was no proof that I was going to pay my rent or that I hadn't, I didn't have any evictions, but they couldn't prove that I would have been a tenant that they would like to work with. So for years, I tried and tried and tried to find somewhere, even when I had a job and when I did not, to find somewhere to live, and it continued to be an issue due to my age, due to the fact that I couldn't provide any sort of rental history, and also in some cases, because I am estranged from my family and I don't have anyone who could vouch for me, I had no co-signers. So they again couldn't prove that I would be a tenant they wanted to deal with. I was fortunate as a youth to have ended up on the street with all of my documents. I was very, very, very lucky to be able to obtain those documents before my mother passed and before my homeless journey. But a lot of people don't have that luxury, especially folks coming out of foster care or those who have just been released from the juvenile justice system. You may have a birth certificate, you may have, I don't know, maybe a social security card, but you don't have all of it. And in struggling to get those documents, which often costs money, even if it's just $30 or $50, that's another barrier to being able to find stability. Because as a teenager on the street, you also have to struggle with finding employment. If you go to apply for a job and you have no address, they're not going to want to hire you. If you show up to an interview in a t-shirt and jeans because it's the only thing clean and respectable that you own due to living in a shelter, they're going to look down on you and not want to hire you because you didn't show up as they believe that you should have. Now, obviously, as the youth that this is what you have, this is all you've got, and you're doing your best, but no one truly thinks about the things that youth go through when they're homeless and when they are attempting to find that stability, because we kind of just see kids on the street and we decide that they're delinquent or that they're causing some sort of trouble rather than the fact that they are in trouble and they may need our help. While trying to find these documents and while trying to provide these documents, there's not a lot of education. If you didn't have your parents teach you how to do it, there's not a lot of education on how you can do that for yourself. For me personally, I thankfully had my driver's license before I ended up homeless, but there was a time where I had lost some of my things in a shelter, with one of which was my social security card. And it took me months to figure out how I was supposed to get a new one. And then I had to find out where I was going to mail it. Thankfully, my items were found and I was able to retrieve my social security card. But I'm not the only one in that shelter who was struggling to get their documents mailed. Even though there are shelters that will allow you to have your mail sent there, especially if it's important documents, there is not a single case manager in any of these shelters that is not overrun with work and paperwork. So even if you can have it mailed to the shelter, who knows if it's going to get buried on someone's desk or shredded or forgotten about or missed. It's it's scary and it's very difficult. And I also knew some folks that were citizens, but their parents were not. So there was a fear of attempting to retrieve their documents or attempting to call attention to themselves due to not knowing if they would still be safe or if their parents would still be safe. And there's, again, no education on how you can navigate those systems without causing more strife and more turmoil for yourself and your family. Um, in going through that as a youth, especially, a youth like myself where you don't have family, you don't have any sort of mentor or role model to teach you what you're supposed to do and how, you fall to the wayside quite often because you're not sure what to do, you're not sure who to talk to, you're scared of what to do for fear of, if you're under 18, there's fear of being taken back to an unsafe situation. There's fear of being put in juvenile detention because they believe that you have been committing crimes or trespassing or are truant. There's fear of everything around you because no one taught you how to do these things. Not to mention, I myself, I was a homeless youth. I am a person of color. I am a transgender person. I am a disabled person. All of these things work against me when I am attempting to find affordable housing or even employment. They either see me as I will cause trouble or be ghetto when I'm looking for somewhere to live because I am of darker complexion and they expect me to be a thug. If I'm trying to find employment and I explain that I need accommodations due to my disability, they're less likely to want to hire me due to not wanting to go through the trouble even in places to live. I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user who lives upstairs right now because it was the only option that the organization that I get my housing through could find for me at such a short notice, and I was in a lot of danger on the street. But when we came to this apartment complex and we explained that I am a wheelchair user and I would need something downstairs, we were blown off with that accommodation. It was treated as if we were just making things difficult. And we ended up with me in an upstairs unit, and I took it because a lot of times you don't have a choice as a youth. You don't get to say, "Oh, I don't want to do this unit. We'll find a new one." There's so many units out there that are not fit or affordable for people my age. Had I have decided I wasn't going to live here because it was upstairs, I would still be living in a tent on the side of an abandoned railroad track in 100-degree weather, which is where I was before I was placed in this unit, and would continue to be had I have not been, had I have made the choice whether I had one or not to not move in here. And I'm not the only youth that goes through that. It's actually a problem that I see all the time, whether it be in my own personal life or within the work that I do. We know on a shallow level that youth need help and that you don't have the life experience to be able to navigate these things that you would had you have come up with your family your whole life or even just been an adult long enough to kind of figure it out on your own. But the deeper root of that is that if we don't take the time to educate and understand the needs of youth that are attempting to find employment or housing, we cannot tackle the issue properly. I have known multiple youth and still do know youth that are going through it who are trying their best. They're trying to learn, but this is not a friendly world for teaching you how to get things done, whether you're 17 or 37. Everything moves fast, everything is difficult, everything is expected to be known whether you're taught or not because no one wants to take the time. But if we pay attention to those problems and we get in early with these youth and teach them how they're supposed to navigate and teach them a way to be able to be self-sufficient, we have a lot more success with them no longer needing those services within a year to 2 years and having a better chance of being on their own feet and having somewhere safe to be and understanding what they need than we do if we just decide that we're going to toss them into the deep end, so to speak. I have watched both sides. I've seen case managers who have done an amazing job of teaching youth what they need to do and being by their side throughout that entire experience and making sure that they knew every step of the process. And those youth have been really successful. Thankfully, I am one of those youth where I've had a case manager that made sure I understood and made sure that I knew what I was getting into and how to protect myself in certain leasing situations. But I've also seen the other side and have been on the other side where it is just expected that I'm supposed to know what I'm doing and that if I don't understand something, they'll just get frustrated with me and not exactly explain it to me. We need to be paying attention to the importance of having a surrounding system for these youth to understand these problems and to be able to work through these problems, not just with case management, but on their own. It's very important that we have not only spaces for these youth to go into while we are going through this, while we are in housing programs, while we are trying to find employment, but it's important that we have that support so that we don't have to re-enter services because there are so many of us still in services. We're in a revolving door of coming in and out of services due to not knowing what to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dane. Really appreciate you sharing all of that. Next, we'll turn to our first provider speaker. We're honored to have Liz Schoenfeld with us today, who is the Chief Executive Officer of LifeWorks in Austin, Texas. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you. Honored to be here today. So my name is Liz, and I have the honor of serving as the CEO of LifeWorks, which has some long, rich history in the Austin area. So we were the product of a four-way merger back in 1998 and have really evolved over time to meet the needs of the community. And over the last 10 years, our mission has become increasingly and squarely focused on solving youth homelessness. And so we offer about 16 different programs spanning housing, education, workforce, and counseling services. And within our housing division, we do street outreach, emergency shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, prevention work. We offer GED classes. We offer workforce development. We use an evidence-based model focused on supported employment, and then we do both community-based and office-based counseling and peer support services. So just wanted to give you kind of like the lay of the land in terms of the scale and scope of services that we offer. We primarily serve youth between the ages of 16 and 26, many of whom, either have experienced homelessness or housing instability. Many of whom have exited the foster care system or have experience with the juvenile legal system, and many of whom have experienced early parenthood. So if you'll go ahead and go to the next slide. And we are really excited because we are about to break ground on our third apartment complex. So about 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago, we opened our first apartment complex called The Works. And then in 2020, just before COVID, we opened our second apartment called The Works 2. And so our third one will be called The Works 3. We were very creative in our naming conventions. Our first two apartment complexes, across both of them, they offer 74 different units. So 45 in our first complex, 29 in our second. The Works 3 will have 120 units. And so this is really a once in a generation opportunity. And I'll talk more about why the timing of this and the funding structure is so unique. But we're really thrilled for how all of this came together. So it's going to be completely dedicated to young people under the age of 25, and 80% of the units are dedicated to youth who are transitioning directly out of homelessness. It has a mix of units, including studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and we anticipate that about 40% of the residents will be parents. So we have in the middle, and you'll see on the next slide in just a second, a middle courtyard area within the building that's going to be dedicated to some natural playscapes because we know that there's going to be families living there, and we really want it to be a robust, thriving community. We are doing everything that we can to make sure that there is as robust programming associated with each of the units. So 50 of the 120 units are vouchered. So 25 are going to be through housing choice vouchers, 25 are going to be through the foster youth to independence vouchers. There will be permanent supportive housing programming. We anticipate that we will have both RIE-funded TLP apartments there, and then also RIE-funded through the maternity group home, but we treat it as independent apartment units will have funding for both of those transitional housing types. And then we will also have, for that remaining 20% that aren't dedicated to youth exiting directly out of homelessness, some move-on units. So for young people who have potentially exited rapid rehousing and scatter site opportunities in town, if they're looking for a more affordable option where they can be around, young people in their same who have navigated comparable life circumstances, they can move into the Works 3 at a more affordable rate than market rate apartments. If you will go ahead and go to the next slide. We also are going to be offering really robust on-site services. So the entire bottom floor of the building is going to be dedicated to office space and community space for the residents. There will be an on-site food pantry. We will be having 24/7, admin support and staff presence. We will be offering on-site counseling and peer support and workforce services and case management. And what's really incredible, so our East Campus, which is our primary service hub, is located in the heart of East Austin. And this apartment complex is going to be a quarter of a mile away from our east site. So it's within walking distance of a significant youth service hub. It is on bus lines. It is within walking distance of a grocery store. It is within walking distance of our community college, one of its campuses. So it is really well positioned in terms of access and in terms of accessibility, just more broadly, and really is a highly desirable area of town, not just for youth, but just in general. So if you'll go ahead and go, I'll talk, sorry, don't skip to the next slide yet. We'll talk a little bit more about why or how we came about getting this specific land and how it all came to fruition in just a moment. But one of the things that we're also really excited about is we have a great working relationship with our architects. So we're partnering with some local architects whose company is called Forgecraft, and they utilize trauma-informed design. And so from the very beginning, they were well informed about who the apartment is going to be really catered to, and we're bringing in recommendations as far as how to structure the building and design the building in a way that is really just cognizant of some of the challenges that can accompany that transition from homelessness into stable housing. And so one of the things that is incorporated into the design is that there are really no sharp corners, right? So there's always going to be line of sight, so that way nobody would have to worry about somebody jumping out from behind a corner or anything like that. Things that might potentially be really top of mind for young people as they've been in survival mode for so long, really wanting to make sure that the site and the design of the building is structured in a way that again, lots of visibility, lots of sense of safety. And we worked with young people who resided at our 2 existing apartment complexes to help inform some of the more nuanced features of the design. And so the example that I love to provide is in the original design for the units, we had showers in all of the spaces, largely because that is, a little bit more affordable to build in. We are a nonprofit. And so when we presented that to the youth, they said, this is, it looks beautiful, but we really want to have showers, or sorry, we really want to have baths in all of the units, because first, if you are parenting, speaking as a parent of a young child, it's practically impossible to bathe a young kid. If you have a shower, you need to have a bath. And then the other piece was that young people said that just the physical sense of taking a bath at the end of a long day, that is so calming and so powerful, right? It just creates that sense of home. It creates that sense of comfort. And so we removed all of the showers and we put in baths in all of the units. Young people also said, talked about the importance of the symbolic significance of having an actual key. We had originally had key fobs for all of the doors. And young people said, we don't want key fobs. We want to actually have the key to let ourselves in, because that just represented so much in terms of having their own place to live. So if you'll go ahead and go to the next slide. I want to just take a moment and talk about how unique this funding structure is. So this all came about back in 2021. So this whole development has been really in the works for about 4 years at this point. Our community received $50 million in ARPA funding through COVID relief dollars that came online that were decided by our county to dedicate to affordable housing. And so LifeWorks, along with 6 other nonprofits in town, formed a collaborative called the Travis County Supportive Housing Collaborative, and we all received a portion of that $50 million of ARPA funding in order to stand up new affordable housing. And so LifeWorks received just shy of $13 million to help support the development. We tend to try to braid different funding streams together in basically everything that we do so that we're not overly dependent on a single funding source. You see this also happening in terms of the construction of this building. We have the $13 million in county funds. We have about $8 million in city funds. And then we have about $5.5 million through state funding through the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs. And then we're raising the balance through a capital campaign, which is also, being used to fund supportive services for startup services when the apartment actually opens in a couple of years. And so that's how the actual structure is being built. But as you know, land is expensive. And so what we ended up doing is we partnered with a developer in town who helped find us a site partner. And so our site partners, you'll see in the middle right here of this image, there's that triangle between those 3 streets. Our site partners owned that entire tract of land, and they're developing the entire piece. Our piece is just that little yellow section that is marked on there. And so we have 1 acre of that 13-acre tract of land. And because our site partners are committed to also developing affordable housing on the remaining 12 acres, they're going to be receiving a significant amount of tax benefits that are so good, in fact, that the county has negotiated a way for our site partners to actually give some of their tax benefits back to funneling and supporting supportive services at our development. So what that means in practice is the site partners have donated that entire 13-acre tract of land to the county, and the county created 2 separate leases, rent-free leases. So we're getting 1 acre lease, and our site partners get the other 12 acres back to them. So we essentially are entering into a 75-year rent-free lease for a piece of land that is valued at $6.1 million that at the end of that 75 years, we will assume ownership of. And then for all of the development benefits that the site partners are getting for building affordable housing, they have agreed to pay a $250,000 flat fee into an account to fund supportive services at the site and to support supportive services across the other 6 nonprofits that are part of the collaborative, and an $800,000 construction fee that they are putting into that. And then year over year, they will be paying a $573,000 annual fee into supportive services. And so LifeWorks isn't getting the benefit of all of that. That's, again, being shared across the 7 nonprofits. But it's a really innovative public-private funding structure that benefits the site partners and then benefits the nonprofit partners as well. And so that's referred to as a public facility corporation arrangement. It took about 3 years to negotiate. Our legal fees are, just out of this world at this point in time. But it is going to have a long-term benefit for the young people that ultimately are moving into the property. And so we're breaking ground in August, and we anticipate that construction will be finished about 2 years later. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz. It's so amazing what you've all been able to accomplish there, and we really appreciate you sharing that. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn over to Tammy DePaulo, who is from Orangewood Foundation in Santa Ana, California. And I probably said that wrong because I'm not a Californian. Sorry.
No, you did great. Thank you so much, Trinity. Liz, that was amazing. We're very excited about your project. I think we'll be reaching out too to find out more. So hello, everyone. It's morning here in California. So good morning, good afternoon. Orangewood Foundation is, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Orangewood Foundation is a community-based organization here in Orange County, California. And our mission is to strive for equity for our youth by valuing and supporting the life they envision. We serve foster and community youth, many who are at risk of or are experiencing homelessness. And today I want to talk about how we are utilizing the Foster Youth to Independence vouchers. So the Foster Youth to Independence vouchers program is a 3-year housing voucher for young adults ages 18 to 24 who are transitioning from foster care and are at risk of homelessness. And supportive services are required to be offered to the FYI voucher holders. And in our experience, this seems to be the concern with many public housing authorities because they don't always have the staffing to provide those services. So in Orange County, we chose to create a collaborative to ensure young adults aging out of foster care could utilize the housing vouchers. And it starts with social services. And they keep an updated list of eligible young adults. And they have their own process of deciding who goes to the top of that list, but it starts with those who are currently experiencing homelessness or those who are parenting. And then when Santa Ana Housing Authority is ready to apply for more vouchers, and typically there's competitive and non-competitive vouchers, typically they are requesting 25 at a time of the non-competitive vouchers. And they, Santa Ana Housing Authority will request the list from social services. SSA sends that list over to the Housing Authority and then also to us at Orangewood Foundation. And then Orangewood Foundation, we connect with the young adults from that list because oftentimes they don't have a social worker anymore. And so they're confused why they're getting this call. They may not have even known they were on this list. So and a lot of times we have that relationship already with them. So we will contact them and let them know what the process is, what this even means, that it actually is a real thing. And then we help them complete their application. So the application for an FYI voucher is really big. It's about this much in a binder. It's like if you own a home, if you've ever owned a home, it's like applying for a home. So it's intimidating for us, but also to our young adults. They've never seen this before. They don't know how to answer all these questions. So we walk through that with them. Then there's a voucher interview process with the housing authority, and we host that here on site because they're comfortable here. They want to come here. We have music playing, we have food and snacks for them, and then they'll have their interviews here with the housing authority. And then we attend their meetings as well when they're getting their voucher, and they go over the rules of the voucher. We support them locating housing. We support them at the lease signing because it's the first time that any of them have ever signed a lease. So we want to make sure that they read it and get pictures. And then also we provide case management services for the length of the voucher. So for 3 years. And all of these supportive services are all voluntary. And so the individuals who receive the voucher, they have the opportunity to opt out, but if they opt out, they can always come back at any time and be like, actually I do need some support, as long as they still have the voucher. And what we work on with the young adults for the supportive services is meeting most of their personal goals that they have, learning life skills, and then through feedback from the participants, we began offering events to help build a sense of community. So the majority of the young adults who receive a voucher want to live on their own. Most of the time, they've never had that opportunity. They've always had a roommate. And so they don't want to do that anymore. And then they get the lease on their own. They get an apartment on their own. Then they start talking to their case manager about how they're feeling very lonely. So we took that feedback and we created some events to build community amongst them, because they're throughout Orange County, and Orange County is really big. So we host things like Friendsgiving and game nights and other events like that for them. So we also, part of our collaborative is United Way, Welcome Home OC program, and they hold relationships with landlords. And so the young adult who has the voucher has the opportunity to choose to utilize their services to find an apartment or to find an apartment on their own. Most of them utilize Welcome Home OC because it will go faster. They can get housing faster. And the benefits for the young adult, aside from getting housing faster, is that the landlords have already agreed to work with them. And so they understand that many times that they're the first time renters and that there might be issues that arise. And they're willing to mediate and work through those with the young adult. And then the landlords like it because they get landlord incentives, holding fees, incentives to renting to our young adults, and then also a partner to mitigate any concerns that might come up with the young adult. And to ensure that our collaborative works smoothly, we have weekly collaborative meetings to discuss any concerns and provide one another with updates. And honestly, this has been a vital part of ensuring that we're all moving in the same direction, we are all on the same page, and we're able to utilize more vouchers. So next slide, please. One of the questions we get asked often is how we're able to fund this collaborative approach. And so there's a few different funding streams that we're utilizing, many through California. So we have housing navigation and maintenance program, and that's state funding to help counties provide housing navigation and stability support. And we're able to utilize this funding. It's funding from the state through our county. And we utilize this to build our team of care coordinators, and then also to provide stabilization funds for young adults. So if they aren't able to make rent, or they need help with utilities or food or anything to stabilize their housing situation, we're able to utilize those funds. Then we also utilize Medicaid Section 1115, and that allows for flexible funding to support services for Medicaid recipients. In California, it's called Medi-Cal, and the funding is called Cal-AIM. And so they help with $5,000 of move-in costs if that young adult has Medi-Cal. And Welcome Home OC also has funding available for move-in costs if Cal-AIM doesn't apply for that young adult. And then, like I mentioned, they also do landlord incentives and mediation, things like that, move-out costs if that applies. And then we also have fundraised dollars from both Orangewood Foundation and United Way. And then we recently applied for Santa Ana Housing Authority's Homeless Housing and Prevention, the HAP Youth Set Aside. And HAP is a state block grant, and the counties that are awarded the funding, they must set aside at least 10% to address youth homelessness. So we just applied for that. And next slide, please. And we have been our collaborative has been around since 2021. And in that time, we've supported 190 FYI voucher holders. And then Santa Ana Housing this year is hoping to apply for 50 to 75 vouchers instead of 25. So we're serving a lot of young adults and things are going great. And with that, I will turn it back over to Trinity.
Thank you so much for sharing, Tammy. I know we at National Network for Youth get questions about FYI vouchers often, so I hope that was very helpful to anyone listening who was thinking about utilizing FYI. Thank you. All right, and our last speaker, I'm very happy to introduce Bonita Campbell from Lighthouse Youth and Family Services in Ohio. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, being here. I'm going to try and bring us home after Dane, Liz, and Tammy. Thank you so much. So Lighthouse Youth and Family Services, our mission is to empower young people and families to succeed through a continuum of care that promotes healing and growth. Our continuum of care includes child welfare services for youth in foster care, residential, and independent living. We also offer clinical services for all of those young people and families. We have a juvenile justice component as well, and also psychiatric services. Our homeless youth services service area includes 2 shelters. We are the only youth serving provider with youth specific shelters, specifically, for 18 to 24-year-olds. And we also have a BCP shelter as well. We offer street outreach, and we also have housing for young families and individuals. We are a YHDP provider. We offer PSH housing and also rapid rehousing. And we do have a prevention program through HHS as well. Next slide, please. So when we talk about landlord engagement, we are really focusing on building partnerships with our landlords. And the partnership is what is key. We don't want to look at our landlords as just a relationship and with a tenant and a landlord. It is really also the relationship that we as an agency have with the landlords. We start that out with having dedicated housing staff. We sometimes joke about a dedicated housing team. Well, our team exists of 2. But those 2 are really dedicated to working with our landlords. We currently have 77 landlords that we work with in our community. And we specifically work on having those units that are landlords who are connected to us. All conversations start with that housing staff. So the landlords are really familiar with those 2 dedicated housing staff. I think it was Dane that talked about case managers, as you all know, being really overwhelmed sometimes with, we hope, really dedicated to the clients that they're working with and the young people and the families. And so we want them to do that work and be available for those young people. Having dedicated housing staff allows them to focus on moving youth in quicker, finding the appropriate housing, and partnering with not only the landlords, but also with those young people to find housing that is specific to their needs and their desires. When there are problems with or issues that come up with the landlords and the tenants, we call that a relationship plus. So the relationship plus with the landlords starts with helping that landlord understand what is our program about. So it's not just about renting an apartment. It's about what does the program offer so that we can build an understanding of, you're not just renting to a tenant. We are trying to build a successful, sustainable lifestyle for this young person. While we know that there should not be discrimination in terms of age or what is happening in a young person's life, sometimes that can happen. So we mitigate that up front by helping the landlords understand we are going to be side by side with this young person. Here is what we're offering to this young person in terms of life skills, in terms of coaching this young person to be a responsible member of the community, the services that they can get in terms of rental assistance and how long that lasts, so that they're understanding, again, the partnership that we're building with them to help this young person be successful. When there are issues or when things come up, we encourage immediate communication with our housing staff so that we can start to talk about how we can come together to come up with a plan to help that young person be successful. Most of the time it does work. When it doesn't, we make a commitment to relocate that client. We do not want evictions. We make sure that evictions do not occur. We will move that young person, and we work with those landlords to come up with a time frame in which to do so. Because we know we can't do it immediately, it takes time, again, to partner with the young person and our housing staff to find the next available housing option for them. Because we don't want to be unrealistic, moving within 24 hours. That's not going to happen. We need a week or 2 in order to do that. Next slide, please. So in successful collaboration with our landlords, we also want to make sure that we are going to do things as easy as possible for them. Sometimes we have situations where the bureaucracy of our organizations don't make it easy to have a great partnership with landlords. We have these processes sometimes in organizations where the check has to go through, I don't know how many people and how many hoops to get the landlord paid. So when there's an option to make sure that there's direct deposit available for a landlord, we should do that. So we do that in our organization. They're getting direct deposit. We started using a database called Loop several years ago, where there's an electronic database where all the documents can be signed and uploaded. Each landlord has a file that they're familiar with as well. All the documentation is there for everyone to be able to see, and it just makes a seamless process for everyone. We have several landlords who have agreed to put in video surveillance in their units for us. This makes a win-win for everybody. The young people feel more secure. The landlord feels secure and knows what's happening in the unit. And when there are questions, because we all know things happen and there's questions, we can easily answer those questions for everybody as quickly as possible. The other thing is the number of youth in buildings or particular complex. We have been very intentional about certain areas of town or certain types of complexes, how many youth we will put in those areas. Or if it's a large complex, are there X amount of youth on one side of the complex versus another? And this just ensures the safety of everybody. It ensures noise, and it makes everybody a little more comfortable. And so we have those conversations up front, because we have landlords who literally contact us and say, we have this many units available. And so we negotiate that so that we are all successful, the young people, the landlord, and us as an agency, making everybody feel more comfortable. Lease negotiations are key. We know that master leases work. However, what else can you do? As I mentioned, we have landlords who come to us asking, can we work with you all? Well, sure. And they offer multiple complexes, multiple buildings. And so we may say, well, if you have 5 units, and we say, well, we can make all of those units free, but your market rate rent is X. But if we say we're going to rent all 5 of them, let's drop that market rate rent. So use those negotiation tactics so that your partnership with that landlord is a little more fruitful for you and for that young person, because eventually we're not going to be able to subsidize the rent. Eventually that young person may have to take over that rent. So how do we do that and make that successful for everybody? I also saw earlier in some questions that had come across about shared housing. That also helps with shared housing conversations in terms of how can we help negotiate that for young people down the line and what that looks like. We have also started shared housing conversations while young people are in shelter, to start working with case managers and those young people about negotiating between them. What does shared housing look like, and what are the pros and cons to being roommates, and start sort of making that lease arrangement between the two of them, if you will, in terms of what do we need to do. I look at it as a business arrangement between the two of them. So in Cincinnati, shared housing isn't something that people do readily and think about, but I happen to have a son who lived in New York, and I'm sure in larger cities, New York and California, people have to do it to be successful. It isn't something that has happened a lot in Cincinnati, but quite honestly, market rate rent has gone up, so we need to more. And so we have to look at it as something that we have to do it very, very much more than we used to. So think about that. Next slide, please. Communication is key. We use a database in Cincinnati as well, in terms of called PadMission, that we use as a COC, to have landlords look at that and know, what is available across the city. And so we gave all of our landlords that ability to know how they could also be successful in renting across the city and just talking amongst each other. And so I know in the interest of time, we need to move forward. So happy to answer any questions later or contact me individually. Next slide. And that is my presentation. I did just want to mention the couple previous slides where there was grass and a balcony. That is actually one of our units. I think it was Liz who talked about trauma-informed care. Having outside space is key to our youth as well, to be able to feel at home and feel comfortable. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you so much to our speakers. I think we answered all the questions in Q&A. We are going to be sharing out everybody's contact information. Oh, there is a question for you, Bonita. Is the video surveillance inside the individual unit or in the complex's lobby?
You're muted, Benny.
Sorry, in the hallways and outside the building.
Oh, it's in the hallways and outside the building. Great. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to our amazing expert speakers. We will be sharing out, with all of your permission, your individual email addresses so folks can follow up with you directly. There was definitely a lot of action. I think folks are very interested in what you've been doing and are hoping to bring that to their communities. Thank you all for joining us and for your commitment to preventing and ending youth and young adult homelessness. We're proud to partner with you, and we hope you have a great Thursday. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.